What is going on, guys? Another peeing in your Cheerios tough love kind of episode. So, some of the most useless current production guns on the market today. The most useless from a practical standpoint. That's what we're going to talk about today on Gunfighter Life. The podcast where we talk about guns, gunfighting tactics, gear, the right way with Almighty God at the center, Judeo-Christian values, and real-world first-hand experience. I'm your host, Michael Milito. I'm going to throw in a rapid-fire bio, nowhere near as long as the normal ones, and we'll get into the main topic. Blessed to have served in the military, law enforcement, combat veteran, private contractor, competition shooter, lifelong hunter, guide. Blessed by God that He got me through all those things so I could share this firsthand training, knowledge, experience with you to serve you today. Let's dive into the podcast. Alrighty, guys. Let's get into it. And I'm going to throw in some caveats here. Not all guns have to be practical guns. Some guys collect like World War I bolt-action rifles. Cool. That's great. Some guys collect, Springfield XDs. That's great. Not every gun has to be a practical gun. Some guys are curio and relic guys. Some guys do cap and ball revolvers. That's cool. That's great. That doesn't mean that they are not fun guns and that you don't have every right to have those and collect those. I'm talking about practical guns. Practical. This is gunfighter life. This is not gun collector life. This is not cap and ball revolver life. This is gunfighter life, like modern practical context for survival guns. Survival guns is the subtitle to this. Gunfighter life, survival guns. And survival, I break into two big categories. Protecting oneself and feeding oneself. Provision and protection. Two big categories. Hunting, CCW, all that stuff falls into those two big broad categories. Serving God, loving neighbor, in those two big categories, providing and protecting. That's what we talk about. So don't think if I say one of these guns that you shouldn't be able to have one of these guns or have one of these guns. But don't make the mistake of thinking that it's a very practical gun. And it doesn't mean you couldn't use any of these guns for certain things. Where I could have a single shot 22 short Derringer, right? And I could, under some circumstance, put meat on the table, right? I could catch a deer in a snare and I could walk up to it and pop it right where the spine meets the back of the brain with a 22 short Derringer and put meat on the table like that. But that's not a real practical gun, is it? So those are a lot of caveats. Now let me get into peeing in your Cheerios. Let's get into what I consider some of the most impractical guns on the market today. Oh boy, here we go. Let's get started with a big bang. The 4570 lever gun. Oh, it's gonna be a big turd in the punch bowl for a lot of people. They are seeing a resurgence. A lot of people love them. A lot of people have them. A lot of people try and think they're great guns for whatever. Here's the deal. We went away from the 4570, and to pee in some more Cheerios, the 4570 was not the round that killed a bunch of buffalo. The buffalo hunting was basically banned, and most of the buffalo were extinct by the time that was hitting the Great Plains. So that's kind of a myth. Look into that for yourself and double check that, but by the testimony of 2 or 3 witnesses, a matter is established. But it wasn't really around that killed a bunch of buffalo. So let's get that done. Also, the military moved away from the 4570 a long time ago for the 3040 Krag, and we moved away from the 3040 Krag to the 30-06. And people are saying, but 4570 is a powerhouse. It'll stop a freight train made of tungsten and uranium. It'll stop a grizzly bear on cocaine. It'll stop whatever. I can't believe that was a movie. I didn't see it. I don't want to see it. But it'll stop anything, man. Now, 4570 is a real flexible cartridge. I'm not saying that it's not a flexible cartridge, but it's hard to pick like a load to represent. But how about HSM 4570 405 grain flat nose? And not because I have any particular affinity for that brand, but it seems like a good old school representation of this round. 405 grains at a muzzle velocity of 1,300 feet per second for a muzzle energy of 1,520 foot-pounds. It's a powerhouse. If we look at a pretty vanilla load in the 30-06, which is no spring chicken of itself, it came out in 1903, but the modern version adopted in 1906, hence the 30-06. Again, not exactly a spring chicken. Okay, you're looking at 180 grains, but the 4570 is 405 grains. Okay, this is 180 grains at 2,700 feet a second for 2,913 foot-pounds. Again, that 4570 load chugging along, still got a lot of power, but it's got 50, and this is not the whole story. Foot-pounds are not the be-all, end-all of ballistic effectiveness. I concede that. But we're talking 2,913 foot-pounds compared to 1,500 foot-pounds to 2,913 foot-pounds. And that's a vanilla 30-06 load. That's a Remington 180 grain core lock. Nothing special, not crazy new technology, not some super hot rod loaded load. That's a Remington 180 grain core lock, right? Now, I am no giant fan of super long range hunting. I get into that a long time ago, like the earlier generation before all the new stuff came out, and I quickly realized I didn't really like hunting that way, didn't want to do stuff that way, mostly because it's time of flight and you can't beat math. I didn't really consider it super ethical, but anyway, you'll know that I'm not a big fan of super long range shooting. However, there's still a pretty big advantage between what you would call a modern, 120-year-old technology Spitzer bullet and a big flat hunk of lead. The fact that I can pretty much aim, point blank range doesn't mean really close range. Point blank range means I can shoot at center of target and hit somewhere in the acceptable zone of that target without adjusting dope, without dialing, my turrets or anything like that. I can just aim, point, click, bang, flop, that kind of hunting. Simple, effective hunting. I can do that out, let's say 220, 250, 275 yards with that 30-06 load. You're talking, 100, 125 yards with the 4570. And it's got less power. It's got less power at the muzzle. Can you shoot really long range with 4570? Yup, people do it all the time. You can shoot 1,000 yards with a 4570 with a rainbow-like trajectory, and you had better know exactly the distance. It works pretty well at known distances because at known distances, your drop doesn't matter. But if you're trying to shoot an animal quickly that you've been stalking and you have a second or so to get a shot off before it bounds over the hill, that longer point-blank range, in my experience, does make a big difference. I'm not one to sit there and drool over BCs. This one's got a 5.3 BC, and this one's got a 6.0 BC. It's so much better. I'm not that dude. But there is a difference, again, between a big, flat, or semi-rounded hunk of lead, and a modern Spitzer bullet. So the 4570, is it fun? Yeah. Is it cool? Do you just want to shoot it because it's fun and it's a bruiser? Okay, but I would not consider it practical. I love the lever action. Okay, well, they make 30-06s in lever actions. The Browning BLR is a super good lever action rifle. They even make a takedown model, stainless steel. So yeah. Will 4570 kill deer? For sure. Will it kill pretty much anything in North America? Yes. But so will, again, the 30-06. So, is 4570 versatile? Yes, but I would argue it's less versatile than the 30-06. So, unless you're hand loading and loading black powder and you want to make your own ammo in the apocalypse or something shy of that, I would say the 4570 lever action is more of a novelty gun than an actual practical gun. Would it be an effective truck gun? Yeah, but I could probably think of 10 other things that would be a more effective truck gun. Does it have really good short-range, heavy-hitting ballistics? Yeah, but you know what else does? A 12-gauge shotgun. Look at the ballistic. Go ahead. You can get mad, but look at the ballistics on a 12-gauge 1-ounce slug. Or a Remington Slugger 7/8-ounce slug at 1,800 feet a second. Look at the ballistics on that and look at the ballistics of a 4570. And then talk to me about short-range ballistics. But with the 12-gauge shotgun, I can also, take a dove out of the air or a quail or, hunt ducks and geese and use it for a much better option for home defense, in my opinion, with double-aught buck. Or I can load it with slugs. Is the 4570 versatile for a rifle? Yeah, but it's nowhere near as versatile as a shotgun. So is there a certain range where the 45-70 is a little bit ballistically better than a 12 gauge slug? Maybe, yeah, from 100 to 150 yards. But everything inside, let's say mostly 120 yards, if you can't get it done with a decent slug and a decent load that you've tested and shot and dialed in your shotgun with, you probably weren't going to get it done with a 45-70 either, let's be honest. So, again, 45-70 Glover. Fun? Yeah. Cool? Yeah. Practical? Eh. And again, I know they're real popular right now. They're kind of seeing a resurgence. Get one because you want one. Get one because it's fun. I wouldn't advise you make it your, one long gun for the apocalypse. And if you want to argue with that, argue with it logically, not emotionally. Okay, so that's just one. That's but one of the picks. Oh, it was still in a whole family here. I don't want to just dog on one particular brand. There are so many bad ones. But pretty much any bullpup shotgun. No. Why? Just why? It's shorter overall length. Okay. Okay. But one of the great things about the shotgun is they point and handle quickly. They point and handle well. Bullpup shotguns don't point and handle well at all. They do have an advantage. But even in a rifle, and I hired IDF guys, and when I was the commander of a tactical team, I ran quite a few IDF guys, and if they had a lot of experience and stuff with a Tavor, with a bullpup, that's great. But it has a very different manual of arms than any other gun. Unless you're just married to the bullpup concept, and your truck gun is a Tavor, and your home defense gun is a bullpup shotgun, but even that is not going to have a similar, manual of arms. So you do get an advantage with a bullpup. You get a shorter, extended package from your body with, a longer barrel length. But you give up a lot for that. You give up ergonomics, you give up reload speed, you give up pointability, shootability. You give up all kinds of stuff. And I don't think the juice is worth the squeeze. Now, there are certain situations where it might, if you're doing a lot of, and I did a lot of EP work. I did a lot of really high level EP stuff. If you're talking about vehicle convoys, tight in massive urban areas, you might make a case that a bullpup like a Tavor or something like it maybe makes sense. But in most cases it doesn't. And the Tavor is probably my favorite bullpup rifle. But look at how much that thing weighs. That thing is a pig. It weighs a ton compared to like an M4 carbine or a Car 15. It's a big girl. The bullpup shotgun makes even less sense to me. There I might find a thing where, and I would let my guys run them again if they were familiar with them and they like them and that's what they cut their teeth on and they want to run a Tavor. That's fine. But you had better kind of marry that platform. It's kind of like running a double single action for self-defense. Nothing wrong with that system, but you had better kind of marry it. Get used to those two different trigger pulls. Get used to a long first trigger pull. And a short, light, crisp, beautiful second trigger pull. You had better marry that and make that your kind of your bread and butter. The bullpup is much the same way. But a bullpup shotgun, one of the beauties of the shotgun is the versatility of it. Right? I can take an 870 or a Mossberg 500 or 590, and that is with no caveats. Like the world is ending, you got to grab a long gun. The 590S is my kind of long gun, and I have really nice guns. I have Scar 17. I have really, really nice ARs. But that would be my one gun because it's the most versatile. It points well. Sure, you could maybe shoot the same ammo if it's reliable, and in my experience, they're not super reliable, the bullpup shotguns. But kind of one of those things is shooting birds out of the air. I'm a lot more confident that I'm going to, take let's say a jump shot on a deer with buckshot with an 870 or a 590 than with one of those crude bullpup shotguns. They just don't handle, they don't point, they don't drive fast for me. Just no, they're really impractical. But they hold, 14 rounds. Man, let's just take a out-of-the-box Remington 870 back when they made good ones and they were reliable. What problem do you have that you can't solve with 10 rounds of double-up buck? 5 in the side saddle and 5 in the gun. What problem can you not solve with 5 rounds of double-up buck? Or if you want to get crazy and mix it up, 5 rounds of double-up buck and 5 rounds of slugs. If you're good with your manipulations, with an 870 or many other semi-auto or pump shotguns, you can reload from the stock really, really fast. So what problem? And that's not even an extended tube, right? My 590S has a 13 plus 1. It's just such a more practical option, and practical is what we're talking about today. Bullpup shotguns, to me, not practical. Okay, so maybe you hold 15 rounds. In what scenario is that better than having a regular shotgun? I can't envision a scenario where you have a problem so big that you're going to stand toe-to-toe and not have a chance to move and maneuver and reload on the move, where you need 15 rounds of buckshot or slugs, or sorry, birdshot. Like, in what scenario? It's like good on paper. It's one of those things that's like, it makes a lot of sense on paper, but in practicality, it doesn't work out that well. Kind of like communism. On paper, it looks good. Everybody shares, hurrah. In practice, you usually get genocides and a lot of people dying. Communism hasn't, so if that's a good analogy, I don't know, but it looks good on paper, but in the real world, the execution, not so much. Oh, this might be the one that ticks off the most people, guys. And I don't do this to tick you guys off. I do this to keep you grounded in reality, hopefully. And I love some of my patrons, and I know some of my patrons love some of these guns. But here we go. Okay. Deep breath. 16-inch barreled pistol caliber carbines. Just why? Except for the Canadians. They have a kind of a weird legal loophole where it makes more sense. Where they can't have like more than 5 rounds in a rifle, semi-auto rifle. But if you're not, from the Great White North, if you're not from Canada, why? They're fun. They're a fun gun. There's nothing wrong with a fun gun, but we're talking practical. A 16-inch PCC. What are you doing? Like, with a gun that big in general, unless you're talking about some crazy thing like a foldable thing, why would you not just have a carbine? Don't make the mistake of, on paper, like, oh, I shot this IDPA silhouette or this silhouette target at the indoor range really quick with a 9mm, and it was pleasant, so therefore it's as effective as a carbine. It's not, though. That paper does not react the way humans react when they're shot with handgun rounds versus rifle rounds. Rifle rounds are way more effective. Even fairly wimpy intermediate cartridge rifle rounds like a 223 or a 7.62x39 compared to a full power rifle round like a 308, an alt-6, a 7 or M mag, right? Even those are way, way more effective. You don't believe me? You don't have to believe me. Go look up Greg Ellifrit's study of stopping power. He did a real-world street analysis of a lot of shootings, good guys, bad guys, cops, gangsters, and just what they were shot with and how effective it was. Go look at the effective difference between any handgun caliber, the Mighty 45, the 357 Magnum, versus any rifle round. It's not even close. If you're going to carry a 16-inch rifled gun, why wouldn't you just carry a proper intermediate cartridge rifle, or even better yet, a full-powered rifle? Why? They just came out, and I don't know if it's about to be at the what I would consider the proven mark, the Ruger SFAR. It's 6.8 pounds. It's a 308, 16-inch barrel, 18-inch barrel, whatever. In what world would you rather have a PCC, and why? I mean, PCCs are fun. It's a fun gun. You want to go plink, 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 pew, 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 and hit some steel targets, super fast, drag race with it. I get it. Super fun. But if that's your goal, do it with a 22. You're going to save a lot of money. And if you don't care what the terminal performance is on the target, why not just shoot the 22? And if you care about terminal performance on target and you're going to shoot a 16-inch barreled gun, right, why wouldn't you just go up to a carbine, an M4, an AK-47, a Galil Ace, pick so many good options. Why would you shoot it? And I love 9mm for a handgun. But why? Why would you do that? There are a few caveats to this, like a 16-inch barrel PCC for like a lever action 357 44 Magnum. Again, if you're legally obligated to not have a semi-auto, or you're gonna get spanked for having it, then yeah, okay, I can see that. But I'm talking about straight practicality. Just they're a fun gun. And if you want a 9mm PCC, I would at least wring the advantages out of it of going more towards the PDW camp, like one of the braced pistol options that are now cool and kosher and legal again. Run one of those where it's super small and lightweight and handy. Because if you're going to move up to a 16-inch barrel, why not just go with a carbine? If you're talking about a super small PDW with a 6, 9, 10-inch barrel, you could make a cogent argument that maybe it's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other between a carbine and a PDW PCC. But a 16-inch barrel PCC, they're a fun toy. Would they kill somebody? Yeah, but again, so will a 22 short Derringer. That doesn't make it practical. If you're going to carry a gun that big and that heavy, and here's another thing. Generally, you think they have super light recoil, but a lot of those bigger PCCs are just straight blowback. So even though you're getting a less powerful round, a lot of times because like an AR is a delayed gas system, and a lot of those cheaper PCCs are a straight blowback system, you're going to have quite a bit of felt recoil for that caliber. Not in general. They have pretty low recoil, but so does a 223. And downrange, the effect is not even close. It's not, a Granny Smith versus a Golden Delicious. It's apples versus oranges. It's way different ballistically. So why not have a much better ballistics downrange? Plus a lighter weight of ammo and all kinds of things. Just impractical for most things. Fun gun, sure. Practical, 16-inch 9mm PCC, not so much. All right. Here's another one. The Coach gun. Now, I like shotguns. You might have known that from my earlier talk in the bio. I really like shotguns. I do a lot on how practical the shotgun generally is. And I like double-barrel shotguns. The one family heirloom that I have is my grandfather's A.H. Fox, double-barrel side-by-side shotgun. I could only guess at the amount of game that thing has taken. It's not museum-quality piece. It's a used piece. I have replaced stuff in that because I still use it, and it still sits by the bed, not for defense, just to take out on really nice sunny days and go hunting with. It'll still put food on the table. A double-barrel shotgun, a proper double-barrel shotgun made for hunting, is good for that. But I talked about that duality. One of the great things about the shotgun is it's so versatile. A Coach gun has 2 rounds. Was that pretty good tech? In Wells Fargo horse-drawn stagecoach days? Yeah, riding shotgun with a Coach gun. That's a thing for a reason. It was good technology at the time. But much like I imagine if Wyatt Earp was alive today, he wouldn't be packing a single-action Colt. He'd probably be packing an STI or a SIG 226. He would be packing what gave him the best odds in the gunfight at the time. So let's move on. Are they cool guns? Yeah. Are they romantic guns? Yeah. Are they super fun to shoot? Yeah. But we get into that duality of survival. Reasonable rate of fire. Look at what a decent Coach gun costs. And look at what a good pump-action shotgun costs. Is 2 rounds of buckshot enough for a lot of problems? Yeah. But what if you got 3 bad guys? Right? You're putting yourself at a distinct disadvantage. I don't think you need crazy high capacity. I'm not against it if you want it. You have the right to be well-regulated and well-armed. But I talked about 10 rounds of buckshot will solve most of your problems. 2 rounds of buckshot will probably solve a lot of problems. But what if you got 3 or 4 guys? Probably a Coach gun is not what you want, especially when for the same price or maybe even cheaper, you can get a really, really good pump-action shotgun with a much more reasonable rate of fire. So in the days of really good, reliable, not cheap Chinese or Turkish knockoffs, but even like a Maverick 88 or a Mossberg 500, like in the days of that, why would you pick a Coach gun other than romance? Are they cool guns? Yeah. And the Coach gun specifically is usually cut short. A lot of them don't take chokes, which gets rid of even more versatility. Could you hunt something with them? Yeah. If a jackrabbit jumps up 15 yards away, great. But if a jackrabbit jumps up at 35 yards away, probably a longer barrel choked shotgun, even if you want to go double barrel, side by side, over and under, is a better choice. So the Coach gun, romantic, yes. Cool, yes. Just handy little shotguns. Yeah. Fun to shoot, fun to take to the range. Yeah, much like the 16-inch PCC or the 4570 lever gun. Yeah, checks all those boxes. But it doesn't check for me the practical survival gun box. Last one. The Derringer. Again, are they cool? Yeah. Are they romantic? Are they neat? Yes. They're impractical for almost any purpose. Again, will they kill somebody? Yeah. But have you ever shot a Derringer? Even like a 38 Special Derringer? They're not pleasant to shoot. They're not super effective. You get 2 rounds. Again, and in the days of good, reliable, other repeatable firepower firearms, whether it's a, Derringers, there is one exception, and I'll get to that. But look at what a Derringer weighs. I have an 11 point something ounce 5-shot 357 Magnum as one of my ultralight carry guns. 5 shots of 357 Magnum and 11 ounces. Look at what, just a 2-shot 38 Special or 357 Magnum Derringer weighs. It weighs more than that. Or also look at something like a Glock 42, where you get a lot more rounds of 380, or a Glock 43, and compare the size and weight of that to a Derringer. Derringers are heavy, so although they're tiny, they're heavy, and you get 2 shots. And just, in my experience, horrible ergonomics. I mean, just, are they fun? Yeah. Are they cool if you just want to have one and take the range or collect them because they're beautiful? And they're all those things, but practical, no, when you could have almost any other option. And for a good Derringer, they're usually not cheap. And there are some really well-made Derringers, like Bond Arms. They make really good, high-quality Derringers. That doesn't make the platform super useful. One exception I can think of. I was a law enforcement officer for a long time. Backup gun. If weight doesn't really matter, but size really does. It was not uncommon for cops to run several handcuff cases. And in one of those handcuff cases, instead of handcuffs, they would run a small gun. For something like that, where you're already carrying a ton of weight and a few extra ounces you're probably not going to notice, and you want to put a Derringer of the same caliber, let's say you're unfortunately an organization that still runs a 40 Smith & Wesson, you could get a Derringer that runs on 40 Smith & Wesson and will fit in a handcuff case, where you probably can't get a semi-auto 40 Smith & Wesson that's going to fit in a handcuff case. So that's like one caveat, like a backup gun where weight does not matter, but you want a certain caliber because you already have that caliber for your main gun. But most of the time, there's a lot more practical options. So that's pretty much my list for most impractical modern production guns of today. We talked a lot today about instruments that sling bullets, that sling lead. But what happens if something got slang with lead that wasn't supposed to, like you, or somebody that you love, or just a bad traffic accident, stopping the bleeding? I would encourage you to EDC a tourniquet. Your tactical tip today, if you're not real familiar with tourniquets, this is a overly basic, simple tourniquet breakdown. The cat tourniquet is basically the gold standard of tourniquets. They're the best, probably. There may be arguably something better, but of common tourniquets, the cat tourniquet is the best. Whatever generation they're on now, I'm not a doctor. I've got TCCC and stuff like that, but cat is generally the gold standard. They're a little big for me to EDC. If you're going to EDC one every day, rock on. I do EDC a tourniquet. I've switched back and forth over the years between a rat tourniquet and a SWAT T. For years I carried the rat. It's a good EDCable tourniquet. It works where the cat may not on small children and animals, but it's mostly just a tourniquet. You could use it for something else, I guess, but it's basically just stretchable cordage. But a SWAT T, which stands for Stretch, Wrap, and Tuck Tourniquet, a SWAT T tourniquet, it can be used for lots of other things. It's basically like a giant single-ply inner tube or a big one of those exercise workout bands. It's kind of like that, if you want to think of it that way, but it's a lot more utilitarian. You can use it for other things if you need some other thing and you don't need the tourniquet. And it fits in a back pocket. It's about the size of a chunky wallet. So guess where I carry it? In my back pocket, like a wallet. And I have for a long time. So either a rat, which I generally would carry if I was EDCing it, I would have a spare magazine on my support side, and I would have another magazine pouch that held a rat tourniquet. So if you're going to carry a cat tourniquet EDC, and I mean on you, not like in your car. I have a whole medical kit in the car. I'm talking about on you. If you need a tourniquet, you might need it right now. You might not be able to make it to your car. Look how quickly it takes you to bleed out from a femoral artery injury. It's not long. So if you're going to EDC a cat, great. But if not, you might consider the rat. You might consider the SWAT T, depending. I know they're not as beloved in certain circles, but it's better than having to make a makeshift tourniquet, of which I have had to do, literally in the real world, not like in practice. Like in a real life-saving time, I had to makeshift a tourniquet. Guess what? Since then, I EDC a tourniquet. Can you make a tourniquet? Yes. Is that a good skill to know? Yes. Have I had to do it? Yes. Better to have a tourniquet. Even a rat or a SWAT T, better to have that on you than the cat that's better that you just don't carry, that's in your car, if you can't make it to your car. So that's my thoughts on tourniquets. Your tactical tip of the day, just a quick rundown on the different. There are other types. So those are three big ones: the cat, the rat, and the SWAT T. Your tactical verse of the day. This is going to tie into what we talked about today. This is from the book of Romans. If I'm being honest, one of my favorite books. For if we live to the Lord, and if we die to the Lord. Therefore, whether we live or die, we are the Lord's. For to this end Christ died and rose and lived again, that he might be Lord of both the dead and the living. But why do you judge your brother, or why do you show contempt for your brother? For we shall all stand before the judgment seat of Christ. For it is written, As I live, says the Lord, every knee shall bow to me, and every tongue shall confess to God, so that each of us shall give an account of himself to God. That, men, is something to think about. Thanks, and have a blessed day. For if we live to the Lord, and if we die to the Lord. Therefore, whether we live or die, we are the Lord's. For to this end Christ died and rose and lived again, that he might be Lord of both the dead and the living. But why do you judge your brother, or why do you show contempt for your brother? For we shall all stand before the judgment seat of Christ. For it is written, As I live, says the Lord, every knee shall bow to me, and every tongue shall confess to God, so that each of us shall give an account of himself to God.